we're skipping this one because this is shelf number 4 for all of you that want to make my life hard. Just so you know, that would be 1 and 4. But you guys don't want to do that to me, do you? This is a fun angle. I am so scared. We'll just move you on back. Hello book lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steph, and in today's video we will be doing Tackle My TBR episode 10. Hello and welcome. How are we already on episode 10 of Tackle My TBR? I have no idea, but I am having so much fun filming these videos and I am so excited for episode 10 of Tackle My TBR. I truly feel like I have been buying a lot less books and reading a lot more of my own books, so I feel like this challenge is definitely working for me. I love when you guys send me coordinates. I love like randomly selecting books from my bookshelves. This is absolutely my favorite video that I do for my channel. If you guys have no idea what Tackle My TBR is, I will definitely leave the playlist linked down below so that you guys can check out all of the previous episodes. But essentially, I get all of my subscribers, which are all of you lovely people that I absolutely love, to send me coordinates that are basically like correspond with my shelves. So I do have 10 shelves in play. So the first number is a number between 1 and 10. The second number is a number between 1 and 6. And the last number is a number between 1 and 50. If you do need help picking coordinates, I have listed the instructions down below in the description of this video. But without further ado, let's get right on in to episode 10 of Tackle My TBR. As always, I will insert the random wheel spinner right here. I have no idea how many spins I will be doing for Tackle My TBR, so we are just going to find out together, but I am going to hit the spinner wheel and we will see what coordinates get selected. I feel like all of the shelves have been getting quite a bit of love lately, which is great. Okay, so 1, 5, and 7. So I do have to move you to the other side of the room and let's go see what book gets selected. Okay, so this is the shelf that we will be counting to, and I do have to count to number 7, so that will not take me long at all. Let us count to book 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed, which is a book that I have had for a very long time. I think that this is the Owl Crate edition. I could be wrong with that, but I have not read this. So this will be the first book that we read for Tackle My TBR episode 10. Okay, so the first book for this episode was a success. I have not read that, and I definitely will not be reading that copy because I think that it is really pretty. So I'm gonna have to find an audiobook or borrow it from the library. Okay, so we are going to do our next spin. I will remove those set of coordinates and let's see what else gets selected. This wheel is getting like so overwhelming. There is a lot going on with this wheel. Okay, 3, 4, and 15. So we do just have to shimmy over on this way. Whee! Okay, so this is the shelf in question, and I'm gonna be honest, I already know what book I'm going to have to read for this because I've read this and this entire series. So it is going to be the next book in the Lunar Chronicles, but just for old time's sake, we're still going to count to see exactly what we land on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 is the last book in the Lunar Chronicles, but I am actually on book 3, which is Cress, which I'm actually super excited about because I don't feel like I would have picked up the series to continue it, but I have been reading the entire series. Like, I started it last year, so this will actually be perfect to add to the TBR. Okay, so let's go for our third spin and see what gets selected. Right now, I feel like I might do 3 or 4, I don't know. These are pretty chunky books, so we're gonna have to see how it goes. 9, 5, and 25. This is exciting because I feel like we haven't hit bookshelf 9. I'm not really sure the last time we did. So 9, 5, and 25. I will take you guys on to the other side of the room. Okay, so here is the shelf in question. There are a lot of books that I've read on this shelf, but also there are definitely some possibilities that I can read. So we will count to 25 and see what happens. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 23, 24, 25. So 25 is Every Value Break by Peter Swanson, which I have read. I read that a long time ago. And then right beside it, we do have The Pull of Stars by Emma Donoghue, which I have not read. I didn't even know that I owned this book, and I have no idea what this is about. So I will definitely have to read the synopsis because I don't know if I'm interested in this or if I'm not. I really did not remember that I had this, but this is going to be book 3 for Tackle My TBR episode 10. You guys can get a little sneak peek at my graphic novel shelves that you never get to see that are not even part of these videos. And it is like stacked to the brim. I'm definitely gonna go for one more, and depending on what this book is, I may do a 5th book, but we are definitely doing this one, and I haven't really decided if I'm going to do a 5th or not. 7, 3, and 10. So I just have to move you guys up, but we are on the right side of the room. Okay, so this is the shelf in question. I am just going to move my little fake plant from IKEA. And I do have to count to 10, so let us start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, which I have read. So if I double back this way, I do get The Kind Worth Saving by Peter Swanson, which I have not read, so this can be added to the TBR for Tackle My TBR episode 10. I have decided to do 4 books for Tackle My TBR episode 10. I feel like that is like a good even number. I get a lot of books off of the TBR, and also these videos aren't super long. Okay, so the first book that we did pick for Tackle My TBR episode 10 is going to be The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This one I am slightly scared for, only because it has been compared to Naomi Novik and Catherine Arden, who are both 2 authors that I feel like their books don't typically work for me a lot of the times. I also have read Ava Reed before, and her book was not my favorite, even though a lot of people seemed to absolutely love it, which was A Study in Drowning. So I am slightly scared to pick this up, but I absolutely am obsessed with my edition of this book. So this sounds like we are following a main character who is the only one in this village that doesn't seem to have magic. So she is very much outcasted because of her broken bloodline. And then it sounds like she is sacrificed by all of the villagers because nobody really cares about her. The synopsis of this book actually does sound pretty interesting to me, so I am hoping that this one works for me. I just am predicting currently that I'm not going to love it, and this isn't going to be my favorite from the video, but there are definitely surprises that can happen. Then one that I am very excited about, because I do want to continue this series, and I have been absolutely loving the books in this series so far, and that is going to be Cress by Marissa Meyer. Again, this is book 3 in the Lunar Chronicles, so I can't really tell you what this one is about specifically because it would actually be some pretty big spoilers, but it does take place right after the events that happen in book 2. I have the worst memory with books, so I am definitely going to have to read a recap from books 1 and 2. This is the problem with not continuing series right away. I truly do forget so much of what happens, and this one is looking very much like Rapunzel, just with the long hair, so I am excited for this. This is like a YA fantasy series, so I am hoping that this one lives up to my expectation. The third book is one that I didn't even remember that I owned, and I don't know why I picked it up because I'm truly like not interested in this book, but I am definitely going to be reading it for this video, so do not worry. I promise you I will just slog through it even if I don't like it, and that is The Pull of Stars by Emma Donoghue. It makes me even more nervous that one of the things on the back of this book says the prose is so intensely alive, and if you guys know me, you know that prose is just not something that I enjoy in my books. I feel like I'm not smart enough for it. I feel like I don't appreciate it the way that it should be appreciated. I feel like it just like bogs down stories, but I'm hoping that that is not the case for this book. So it sounds like in this book, it does take place in Ireland. We are following the story of a nurse that works at a maternity ward that is very much understaffed, and it is dealing with patients that have come down with a very serious flu. This actually sounds like it is going to be a super emotional read, and I am actually very much excited after reading the synopsis of this book. It sounds like we do get to follow these women over a period of 3 days. So I may actually try to physically read this book so that I can maybe annotate and follow along with the story. I am also very curious to see the reviews on this book because it actually sounds very interesting, and I had no idea what this was about. And finally, the last book for Tackle My TBR episode 10, and that is going to be The Kind Worth Saving by Peter Swanson. This is book 2 in this series. I actually read book 3 without realizing that it was part part of this series. I have read book 1 as well, so I am just missing reading this. I have heard really good things about this. This is a mystery and thriller, so I will just read the little snippet at the top because I really don't like to know what my mystery and thrillers are going into them. But it says, a private eye starts to follow a possibly adulterous husband, but little does he know that the twisted trail will lead back to the woman who hired him. I really enjoyed book 1 in this series. Book 3 was a very big miss for me, so I am very curious to see how I will feel about this one. I feel like this will be a super quick and fast-paced book, so I am excited to have this on the TBR to kind of break up some of the bigger and longer books that are on this episode. Okay, so those are going to be the books that I will be reading for Tackle My TBR episode 10. Again, if you guys would like to participate, you are more than welcome to leave me a set of coordinates down below in the comments. As always, I will give you guys my updates as I can. I feel like I always tell you that I do update at the 50% mark and then at the end, but sometimes it just does not work out that way, and I do apologize. I do try my best to give you guys updates whenever I can, so typically I try for 50% and then I give you my final in-depth thoughts. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode of Tackle My TBR. I hope that you guys are enjoying this series, and I will see you guys when I have some thoughts on the first book. Okay, hello, how are we doing? Welcome to Tackle My TBR episode 10. As you guys saw, the book that I am starting with is The Kind Worth Saving by Peter Swanson. This was just the audiobook that was available to me first, so I did decide to start with this one, and I will give you guys a little bit more context on this. I will start by saying, I don't know if I mentioned it, that this is a second in a series. Although you don't technically 100% need to read the first one in order to read this one, I would say that it should be a requirement to read the first one before this one, because not only are you going to see a lot of the same characters, there are a lot of relationship dynamics where I think it makes a lot more sense and a lot better of a reading experience if you had read the first book. Now, in saying that, it has been years since I read the first book, and I was kind of teetering with the idea of do I reread the first book so that I am equipped to read the second book? I didn't end up doing that, and honestly, while reading this book and being reintroduced to these characters, I was able to really remember a lot of what happened in the first book. And I'm not someone who usually remembers books very well. Once I finish reading a book, it's pretty much in my brain, and I know whether I liked it or I didn't, and then I kind of wipe my memory of it. But this one, as I'm reading, as I'm hearing the characters and then remembering the relationships, it's actually been so easy to remember exactly what happened. So in a nutshell, this book, essentially, we are following a private investigator named Henry. He is from the first book, and a woman named Joan approaches him and basically says, I think that my husband is having an affair, and I would like you to find out what exactly is going on with that whole situation. And then the little twist here is that Henry actually recognizes Joan, and Joan does tell him that he was a teacher when she went to high school. And I also should mention that this book deals with a lot of trigger warnings with mentions of school shootings, so do be mindful of that. That is not a spoiler, as we do find out that this event took place in the beginning of this book, and then it is talked about a lot up until the 50% point of this book, which is where I am at currently. That's kind of all I'll give you on the synopsis. So it's basically a private investigator looking into this woman's husband to see if he is cheating, and they do know each other from a previous event that happened at this high school. So very quickly, just some thoughts that I'm having on this book. I won't talk too much about it. I already said that I think it does a very good job in reminding you what happened in book 1, and I personally think that book 1 is required in order to read this. I know you probably could technically read it as a standalone, as it is its own mystery, but there are just a lot of things that happen so far in this book that make very good connections to book 1, so I would say that it is a requirement for that. I will also say that I read the third book in this series prior to reading this, and I really did not have a good time. I am so happy that I feel like Peter Swanson is back. I feel like I am loving the way that he is telling this story. This is why I really fell in love with Peter Swanson as an author. I really enjoyed the way that he does his storytelling and reveals, and this is no exception. I love that he breaks it up into parts, and each part you are following different characters, and the story gets pieced together in such a unique and creative way, and I loved that about book 1, and I am absolutely loving that about this one as well. And yeah, I'm just just having a really good reading experience with this. I'm excited to see where it goes. We do also get flashback scenes, so it's not all just present day. We do get a lot of background information on Joan specifically, and I find her like background information storyline actually to be like probably the most interesting right now. I'm kind of like the most captivated by that. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where this goes. This is giving like 4-star energy right now. I will check back in once I have finished this book and give you guys my final thoughts, but so far I am really enjoying it. And I highly recommend reading the first book and then picking this up if you are looking for like a good mystery and thriller. So yeah, I will talk with you guys when I do have some further updates. Okay, hello. How are we all doing? I do have some more updates for Tackle My TBR episode 10. The first update I have is that I did finish The Kind Worth Saving by Peter Swanson. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about this. I feel like most of my thoughts I was able to get across with my 50% update. The only thing I'll say about this is that I really enjoyed the twist, and I also really enjoyed seeing an interaction between two of the characters in here, and I really liked how that interaction kind of played in with the twist. I think it all made sense. I didn't think that like Peter Swanson was looking for like a cop-out. It also ties back to all of the past chapters that we get to read from as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. It really made me remember why I enjoy Peter Swanson so much, because a bunch of his books that I've read since his earlier works have really just been super disappointing to me, and this one is more so a newer release. I know it has been out for a few years now, but it is more so on the newer side, so it does give me hope that I will still enjoy some of the books that he comes out with. I was very happy that I finally picked this up, and again, like I did say in my previous clip, I do feel like you need to read book 1 before you read book 2. You would be doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't do that. And also, like I said, it does give you a really good reminder and recap of things that have happened. Like your brain does start like piecing things together and saying like, oh yeah, I remember that from the first book. And once you get introduced to the characters, you kind of remember like their role in the first book. So I do really recommend both books 1 and 2 for this series. And again, 4 out of 5 stars. Then please don't hate me, but I did start and I was able to finish an entire book before I like jumped on here and gave you an update, but it is like the 3rd book in a series, so I feel like doing it from start to finish is no problem, but I do apologize because I'm really not great at my like 50% updates. But the book that I am talking about is Cress by Marissa Meyer. I did have a pretty long bus ride. I went to go visit one of my besties and she lives like 5 hours away from me, so I did have a long bus ride and I was able to listen to this over like both bus trips, which was very convenient, and I also just did not update at all, so that is kind of why I like started and finished this book without updating. So again, I cannot really give you anything on the synopsis of this book because it would like heavily spoil books 1 and 2. The only thing I will say about this is that we are introduced to a new character named Cress, and Cress is living on a satellite, and that is kind of where the like Rapunzel vibes come from in this book. I will say that the Rapunzel vibes were so good in this book. It was 100% giving that exact storyline like right from the beginning, which I absolutely loved about this book. And like I said about the previous book that I read, this book also does such a great job at just like recapping everything from the previous books. You really do get a very good grasp of the story. You are right back into the story. You're right back in with the characters. It's a direct continuation from book 2, and I feel like book 2 also did a really good job of doing that coming from book 1. I have nothing but good things to say about this series. I was obsessed with the new characters that we get introduced to in this book. There is a little bit of a romance that is going on between our like 2 new characters that are introduced, and I was like live, laugh, loving with them. I was absolutely obsessed. I really enjoyed it. Another thing I will say about this book that I really enjoyed is that we got so many different dynamics in this book. Like we are introduced to so many like cool new characters, but not only that, we are reintroduced with our old characters, but those characters are teaming up with like different characters, and there is so many shifts that are happening in this book, and there is just so much going on with the story that I was completely captivated from like beginning to end. I feel like the character dynamics in this book are stellar. Like they are 10 out of 10. And again, as I was trying to explain, it's just such a cool concept when you have characters that you really love and they're not in that same setting. There was a desert setting in here, which I was absolutely obsessed with. Like Like, it was just such a like cool dynamic and such a like different shift in where we had been going with this story. Yeah, the relationship between both of the new characters that are introduced, like I said, was really, really good. And there is a plot point in here where we are taking something that the characters thought was figured out, and they thought that they were on this like really good mission into like solving this, and this book kind of like debunks that. There is a whole thing with like a mutation, and I was just absolutely obsessed with this. I really, really enjoyed it. The ending of this book was so satisfying. We have two characters specifically. Obviously, I will not spoil anything. There is two characters specifically that reunite at the end of this book. The conversations that they have at the end, there is something that is revealed to one of them at the end of this book, and it really sets up the next book so well. Like, you really do want to pick up the next book, and it's so funny because I do definitely want to pick up the next book, but I feel like these books get selected for all of my Tackle My TBR episodes. I feel like I've read this entire series for this series on my channel, which is so funny. And I am very excited to get to the last book in this series, which I do believe I will know who the new character that is going to be introduced in that is, just based on this book. And they definitely have been talking about this character in this book, and they have kind of like teased, and I believe that the name of that character is the name of the next book in the series. And yeah, not much more to say on this. Again, this is the third in a series, but if you were to ask me, I have given all of these books over a 4-star. This one I did give a 4.25 star. I have loved every book that I have read in this series. I would 100% recommend this series, and that is saying a lot because this is a YA series, and YA just really hasn't been doing its thing for me lately, but I cannot say anything bad about this series. I am really hoping that it wraps up nicely. And yeah, 4.25 stars. I am so excited that this did get picked for this episode. Okay, so those are my reading updates. I hope the next time you see me, it is with a 50% update. I do not know what book I am starting. I believe I have both of the remaining books on Libby to listen to the audiobook. So when I decide which one I want to start, I will pop on here and give you guys some update. Good morning. How are we all doing? I am going to do a very quick update as everybody in my house is still sleeping and I just woke up. But I am just going to say that I did start a new book for this video, and I have been listening to it over the last few days, and I did make it to the 50% mark. And the book that I am talking about is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. First of all, I am just obsessed with this edition that I have. I think that it's just so stunning, but unfortunately I can't say the same about the actual book. So basically, very quickly, I will give you guys a little rundown of what this is about, or what I have been able to grasp up until this point. So we do follow our main character, EVK. So EVK is like the only one in this village that does not bear any magic, and she comes from like a very corrupted bloodline. So everybody in the village, all of the villagers, they decide that they are going to sacrifice her to the woodsmen that come and basically are asking for a sacrifice one day. The villagers are like, we don't need you. You are no like use to me. So then the woodsmen are all of these like big burly men who just think that they are untouchable, and they are basically en route to the capital when all of a sudden they get brutally attacked, and all of them die except for one named Gaspar. So it's Gaspar and EVK as they are navigating like this little adventure that they're going on. And then Gaspar does have a brother that does want to seize the throne, but Gaspar has different plans, so the two of them kind of partner up to try and stop his brother from seizing the throne. That is what I have grasped. That is what is in the synopsis, and I do feel like the synopsis does give you a little bit much. I didn't read the full synopsis and give you everything because I feel like there's certain things in the synopsis that are written further down in the book, and I really just don't like being spoiled that way, so I'm not going to do that to you. That is the basic premise of this book. Now for my thoughts at the 50% mark. I will say that I heavily considered DNFing this book. I have never DNF'd a book, and that is kind of like my claim to fame. I know nobody else cares, but I personally feel like that is just something that I can say about myself, that I have never DNF'd a book, so I have always given it 100%. I have always tried, and I do feel good about that accomplishment. Now, for my own sanity, I don't think that that is a very good thing, and I was really heavily considering DNFing this. About 20% of the way through, I was just not having a good time time, even when there were these like really graphic scenes. So when the woodsmen all get like attacked by these monsters, there was just no emotion behind anything with me. I didn't really feel for these characters and I was really quite bored. But I will say that this is a instance where I am actually happy that I didn't DNF, because it has progressively gotten better. I have started to enjoy our two main characters more, and I do really appreciate how like dark this story is, and I do like that it does have quite a bit of horror elements mixed into this book, which I didn't really know. But there have been some scenes where it is like grotesque horror, and I am living for that. I really do enjoy that. I don't think it's going to make this like an all-time favorite. I don't think I'll give this anything more than a 3-star at this point, but that is to say that I am happy I didn't DNF, and I am more so enjoying my reading experience of this book. I will say that I knew going into this that this wasn't going to be like my full cup of tea, just because it was compared to The Bear and the Nightingale and Spinning Silver, both books that I did read and did not like, because that is just not the type of book that I am into. If that makes sense, if you have read those types of books, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a little bit of like folklore, there is mythology. This, I believe, is a retelling of Goose Girl, which I don't know the original source material, so I don't have anything to compare it to. So I'm not really into those types of stories, so I knew kind of going into this that I wouldn't be having the greatest time, but I am happy to report that I am at least enjoying my reading experience more so than I thought I would. There is a little scene that happened in the previous chapter. It was a little tease between both of our main characters, and it has made me quite intrigued to continue with the story. It has made me enjoy both of our main characters a lot more, so I am happy to report that. And then my only other like real thought on this book, and what is kind of taking me out of the story, is that there are words in here that are written in a different language, and I am totally fine with that in my books, but I just feel like in this one specifically, they aren't explained enough. Like, I'm not really sure what the characters are trying to say. I don't feel like every single time a like new word is introduced that it's 100% explained, and I don't know if that's just because I'm listening to it on audio that I'm not able to comprehend, or if it's just actually not explained. So that is another like one thing that I am having a little bit of an issue with. But yeah, other than that, I am going to continue on. I am pretty much exactly at the 50% mark, and I will check back in with you guys once I have finished this book and started the last book for Tackle My TBR episode 10. Okay, hello. I fear that I have disappointed and let you all down, because this update is going to be my final update for Tackle My TBR episode 10. I have been so busy and just have had no time to do updates, but I have had a little bit of time for listening to my audiobook. So I will close out my thoughts on The Wolf and the Woodsman, and then I will talk about the final book for this video and then kind of wrap it all up. I do apologize for the chaos of this video, but I have just really not been feeling like super myself lately, and I feel like these updates kind of show it, and they are a little bit lackluster, so I do apologize in advance. But let's get on with these updates so then we can close out this video and hopefully be back better than ever for episode 11. Okay, so like I said, I do want to close out my final thoughts for The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This, I was definitely on a roller coaster with the way that I felt about this book. I was hating it, then I was enjoying it, and then I really just did not end up liking this book. And it's really no surprise. I kind of knew exactly what I was getting myself into when this book was selected, and I only have a few additional points that I want to add to my like final thoughts on this book, and then we will move on from it. The first thing I will say about this is that I don't think that I 100% understood the magic system in this book. I was definitely left feeling a little bit confused and not really able to like grasp exactly what was going on in terms of the magic in this book. So I feel like that definitely diminished my enjoyment while I was reading it. There is a trope that is done in this book that happens with Gaspar, and I personally just feel like I don't care about that trope. Another thing that I didn't absolutely love is that I feel like the plot of this book, there were sections where I really feel like it just did not make any sense. Like, we had a relationship between EBK and the king, and there was just so much going on between them that it felt like super unbelievable. I just could not get behind how they were like interacting with each other and how they were able to kind of just make that relationship work. It was just very strange. I can't say obviously too much about it without giving away spoilers, but the relationship between her and the king just didn't really make sense. I feel like with stakes that were high, that there should have been a little bit more like distrust basically between them. But yeah, that's another thing that I really just did not end up enjoying. crying about this. And then the last thing I will say, and then we can move on from this book, is that the ending did feel like a bit of a cop-out, and that is kind of going back to that trope that I was talking about. And it just seems like with everything that went down in the book, at the end of it, we are just kind of left with everything is answered, but there's really no explanation behind these answers, and everything is kind of just forgotten with like the entire story that we just read. So I'm not a huge fan of that, and I just feel like the ending of this book was a cop-out, and I did end up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. Okay, and then very quickly, the last book that I read for Tackle My TBR episode 10, and that is going to be The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. So basically, just more context on this, which I don't even remember what I said on the synopsis. This book does span over 3 days, which one of the reasons I really did enjoy it was the fact that it takes place just in the span of 3 days. I find that stories that are super condensed give you a very different reading experience than something that takes place over a longer period of time, but I digress because this takes place over 3 days. We are following our main character, who is a nurse that works at a very understaffed hospital, and her name is Julia Power. Not only is the hospital that she works at understaffed, but there is an entire flu that is kind of taking over the population. It is a pandemic type story, and she does specialize or is learning from this doctor that specializes in midwifery, and I think it's midwifery, even though I thought for the longest time it was midwifery, but you guys can correct me down below in the comments. I'm pretty sure that is how the audiobook said it. And for those who do not know, it is just dealing with pregnant people. So this book I kind of have very mixed feelings on. I feel like I would have done myself a favor had I have physically read this. I really wasn't vibing with the audiobook, so I feel like my lower rating has a little bit to do with the audiobook, which I honestly find so annoying in myself that I do this, but there's just so many books to read and I just do not have the time, so audiobooks are just a lifesaver. But I definitely feel like this one should be a physical read. It was so interesting to read this story and kind of see all of these like remedies that doctors like swear by at the time that this book took place. I think that this was like early 1900s. I think it's like 1918. So very early in the 1900s, and just reading about some of these remedies, the doctors would be like, okay, give her this. And it's like, would never give a pregnant person certain things in this day and age, but like at the time, this is what they believed they had to do in order to kind of get over this like flu, this sickness, and also be able to deliver very healthy babies. I feel like because this hospital was also like extremely understaffed, that the training for people who were willing to work at this hospital was just very desperate, and they really were just taking anybody that wanted to come in, even though they had like no previous training. I feel like the chapters in this book were so long. Like there was probably an hour of listening time or more where we are literally just in labor with this one woman that is at the hospital, and long chapters really don't do it for me, and I really don't want to be reading about somebody in labor for an hour. But to be honest, it was actually like very, very interesting, but also was like so anxiety inducing because I could not imagine having to give birth in this time with all of the like medical practices that they are performing and doing in this book. Like I was having anxiety while reading this book because I just felt so bad for everybody that was like suffering through this. But I definitely appreciate that this book did feel like very well researched. I feel like the author definitely did take some elements of things that actually happened and also like really did her research for this book. And I did listen to the author's note, and I believe that one of the doctors that is actually in this book is actually a real life doctor, and they did a lot of like really good things at this time. So I did find that to be very, very interesting. I also do have to say that I know that it is probably exactly how this time period was, but the men in this book were just so insufferable. And again, I'm sure it is because of the time period, but I was just rolling my eyes when I was listening to this. Like some of the things that they were saying and that were coming out of their mouth, I just couldn't help but roll my eyes. We'll also say that this book had a lot of really graphic scenes. There is a ton of like birthing scenes, and I will also warn you that I am going to say, think of trigger warnings for pretty much every situation that you can possibly think of is in this book. So if you do not like to read about things with pregnancy and certain triggers, I would definitely avoid this book as it is very, very graphic and there is so many different outcomes that happen within this book. Again, I did really quickly mention this, but I am just going to say it again. I loved that this book took place over 3 days. I love that we were in like a very closed setting. We weren't always in the hospital setting, but I did really like how close it was, like basically 3 women that worked at this hospital, and we got to see like their relationships and them interacting with all of their patients, and we got to learn about pretty much everyone at this hospital. So you really did feel like you are a part of this book. I think the thing that I really struggled with this book the most is the whole like pandemic element of this book. I personally don't mind reading pandemic stories, but this one just felt like such a drag to me. I don't know what it was about the way that it was written, but this pandemic just, maybe it felt really, really real, and that's kind of why I didn't absolutely love it, because I was kind of like taken back to when we all went through our own version of like the COVID-19 pandemic. But I am just going to say that that's probably why my rating is a little bit lower than what I would have anticipated, especially because I did actually end up enjoying this story. So I did end up giving this book a 3.25 stars. And yeah, a lot of good things happening in this book. I definitely would recommend this to certain types of readers, but there are a lot of people that this is not going to work for just because of the whole like pregnancy, birthing, like very graphic scenes. But I did think that this story was like super emotional, and you do really fall in love with these characters. Okay, so very quickly, let us recap the entire episode of Tackle My TBR episode 10. And again, I do apologize for my lackluster updates. I am going to try and do better, but I have just been like KO this week. I have had like a million things going on, but let's wrap up this video so that we can start fresh and move on with the next episode. So the first book I read for Tackle My TBR episode 10 is going to be The Kind Worth Saving by Peter Swanson. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It made me remember why I loved Peter Swanson so much, because I just have not been enjoying his books lately. I really loved being back with these characters. I personally think that you definitely need to read book 1 before jumping into book 2. I love how Peter Swanson used the relationships of the characters that we already know and used them in the end of this book, and it just kind of wrapped up so perfectly. So this was a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Cress by Marissa Meyer. This I gave a 4.25 stars. I absolutely loved being introduced to the new characters. I loved all of the new settings that we got to go to. I loved how all of the character dynamics have changed in this book, and I absolutely loved the ending between our 2 characters that are finally reunited. I was absolutely obsessed with this. This was the best book that I read for this video, and again, 4.25 stars. Following that, I did pick up The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This book I didn't absolutely love. It was the worst book that I read for this video, but I am not surprised, as I'm pretty sure I said that I probably would not like this at the beginning of this video. I am just not really into like mythology and folklore, and I really just did not understand the magic system in here, and I really heavily considered DNFing this book. I thought that the ending was a cop-out. I didn't really believe a lot of the relationships that were happening in here, but I think that if you do like Spinning Silver and The Bear and the Nightingale, then you would absolutely love this book, because I personally did not like either of those books, and I also didn't love this, but I did end up giving this one a 2.5 stars. And then finally, the book that I just talked about, so I will not spend too much time on that, and that is going to be The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. I really loved that the story took place over 3 days. I loved the setting of this book, and I really did love the characters and the relationships in here. The things that I didn't really love were like the pandemic elements and just like very long chapters, especially of just like graphic birthing scenes. Like I just did not need an hour-long chapter to listen to that, but I did still have a good time, and I would recommend this to a certain type of reader, so I did end up giving this one a 3.25 stars. So that is going to be it for Tackle My TBR episode 10. I again apologize for just how much of a mess I was this video. I hope you guys still enjoyed it, and I hope that if you guys want to participate, you do leave me a comment down below with your set of coordinates. Again, I do have the rules for how I play Tackle My TBR down below in the description of this video. That is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did make it to the end of this video, you can leave behind any of the bird emojis, just because one of the books has a bird on the cover. If you did like today's video, I would love it if you hit that thumbs up like button. And as always, if you are new here, I would love to have you stick around. So please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all in my next one. Bye.